from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed him to his tomb and saw how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested. But on the first day of the week at early dawn they came to the tomb. And what did they find? An empty tomb. Two men in dazzling white clothes asked the women, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen." Returning from the tomb, the women told this to the 11 and all the rest. They were not believed. These 11 and all the rest, who huddled in fear of continued Roman retribution, who were sunk in misery over the death of Jesus, who were lost in the despair of anticipated outcomes gone awry, they have been blindsided. Their annual pilgrimage to the Passover festival has ended. They cannot stay in Jerusalem. They have homes, jobs, and routines. They still have to pay taxes and provide for their families. On the same day the women announced the empty tomb, Cleopas and another, Simon, begin the 7-mile walk back to the village of Emmaus. What can they possibly talk about as they walk? The price of grain? How many eggs their chickens have laid? As with anyone who is numb with despair, they hash over recent tragic events. Their bodies move forward. Their hearts remain mired. While they are walking and talking, Jesus comes near them and is unrecognized. The conversation that ensues, Cleopas and the other retelling the death of Jesus in the empty tomb, the stranger admonishing them for their disbelief of prophecy, this is a deliberate bridge constructed to move these men forward in their new lives. The first piling was laid in Jerusalem. The bridge surface is constructed as they walk and interact together. The destination piling is laid on the dining table. The stranger takes bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it to them. Cleopas and the other finally see the risen and resurrected Jesus and know the truth of everything that Jesus had predicted. This shared meal, not the empty tomb, is the first Easter. They immediately return to Jerusalem and announce, "The Lord has risen indeed." What was it that cemented this knowledge? Was it that a stranger appeared mysteriously from nowhere? Was it that the stranger could apply Old Testament prophecy to recent events? It was only in the breaking of the bread that Jesus became known to them. It was a familiar event shared many times during Jesus' ministry. It's this event that triggers recognition. I find it especially poignant that Jesus revealed himself to a couple of nobodies, Cleopas and Simon. Or were they? In some traditions, Cleopas, or Clopas, was the younger brother of Joseph, husband of Jesus' mother Mary. It is speculated that they came to Jerusalem from their village of Emmaus, were most likely in the crowd to see Jesus ride into Jerusalem on his borrowed colt, and in John's Gospel, they witnessed Jesus' crucifixion. How would the flavor of their conversation have changed if it were a woman and a man, a husband and a wife, walking and talking on the way to Emmaus? Imagine the shared intimacy. Perhaps they were able to shed some tears together, hold each other's hands. Perhaps within their bubble, they were not as open to the world about them. However, there is also a specialness about the relationship between Cleopas and Simon, the unique bonding of men who experience disaster. Perhaps Luke left the name Simon out at the beginning of this gospel for a reason, so that you and I could place ourselves on the road with Cleopas, so that we could imagine ourselves suddenly confronted with a dead man risen, so that we could know that Jesus walks with us always through the good times and the bad, community, and share the Eucharist. We know that the Lord is risen, not because we have touched the nail holes in his hands or placed our palms on the wound in his side, but because we hold to faith values that are not natural